Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I'm pleased to present two people that embody two attributes that I deeply admire and respect. That is entrepreneurship and helping artists build sustainable careers. I promise you will leave smarter and more enlightened than you arrived. Before we start, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in jobs throughout the industry. So, by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. And in this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the interview. Also, and this is very important, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the host and speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors for without their support, we could not do this for free. Special thanks to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Tennessee Brew Works, Better Than Booze, and MedJet. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome Lloyd Starr. Lloyd is Chief Operating Officer of Discogs, the world's largest online database and marketplace of recorded music serving record collectors, buyers, and sellers alike. In this capacity, he's responsible for the company's overall growth, innovation, and ensuring the evolving platform continues to meet the needs of both existing and new users. Previously, Lloyd was president and COO of the vinyl record subscription service Vinyl Me Please, as well as VP of Digital at Native Instruments. He started his career at the pioneering dance music service called Beatport, where after initially joining in a software development role, he ultimately ascended to the position of president and COO. In addition to his role at Discogs, Lloyd is currently a member of the Vinyl Alliance. He previously played a pivotal role in establishing the vinyl record manufacturing facility in Denver and has advised entrepreneurs of over 7 years as part of the Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network of Colorado. Welcome, Lloyd. It is such a privilege to have you with us today. And joining Lloyd as today's featured guest is Jorge Brea. Jorge is the founder and CEO of Symphonic Distribution, a 100% independent company offering full service distribution, marketing, royalty collection, and more for record labels, artists, managers, and distributors alike. His career started as DJ and producer at age 16, releasing over 45 vinyl records of original music in the electronic dance music category. In 2006, with no venture capital, no outside funding, and out of his parents' home, Jorge launched Symphonic Distribution with one goal in mind, and that is to make it easier for independent musicians to get their music heard. His team has grown to over 150 passionate professionals in offices headquartered in Tampa and footprints in major music markets like Brooklyn, Nashville, Bogota, Mexico, South Africa, Canada, and Brazil. Jorge was on the Tampa Bay Business Journal's 40 Under 40 list in 2023 and featured on the cover of Tampa Bay Business and Wealth magazine. He's an active member of the Music Fights Fraud Alliance and led Symphonic's initiative to make monthly contributions to the NCAA Legal Defense and Education Fund. He also supports animal rights, women's empowerment, and mental health organizations. Jorge also makes music under the artist name Loco Velacet. It is my pleasure to welcome these two rock stars to our platform today. Take it away, guys.
Awesome. Tom, man, what an awesome intro. I should just have you around a lot more just for me to feel good about that. And also just to hear how awesome Lloyd is, honestly. It's really cool.
that was I don't think anybody's been that nice to me for that long in my life. I really enjoyed
It's
that.
beautiful. And Lloyd, obviously you and I go way back. So I was really excited to be able to do this with you, particularly because you are one of the main reasons or one of the main folks that were a part of the beginning of symphonic, I would say, being that my history is in electronic music, and we started working with a company that you worked at in Beatport. And
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because you started off your career sort of doing one thing, and then you've evolved into different things. And I think the world needs to hear what you did at Beatport, and then that will, I think, be a great way to kick us off.
Oh man, it's such a pleasure. It's always great to see you, Jorge.
Same, same.
We check in with each other every so often and kept track of each other's careers along the way and provided references for each other at different points. And so I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you too. Man, yeah, my time at Beatport was really fun. In as I look back, then kind of a blur. We launched that business out of an agency, Factory Design Labs here in Colorado. The owner, Jonas of Factory, was a DJ too, and had this dream of we were gonna, get rid of the, DJs carrying their bag everywhere and move it into downloads. And iTunes hadn't even launched yet, so it was really forward thinking. And I was just a software developer on his team, and I still remember the day he slid a design of Beatport over in front of me and asked me, of all things, and I'm really going to date myself, can you build this in Flash?
Yes.
Because he wanted it to look like a digital DAW
Yeah.
instead of like an everyday website. And we did. We embarked on that. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, my career there started as a software developer, and we worked, and then eventually we got bigger and bigger. I still remember the days we were looking at each other. It's like, man, if Beatport could make $6,000 a month, like this would be huge. And it just from there just took off and became this massive global business. As I moved up through running, software operations and then IT, and then eventually I was in product, and then eventually I was running all of operations, and then rose to a senior executive position. And through that journey is when I met you.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember overseeing the label and distributor management team at the time, and I was learning all these new names and faces. It was just the wildest thing because we had like 37,000 independent labels putting music on the platform at that point. And my buddy Clark would be with me all the time, be like, "That's so and so, and that's so and so," and I felt like a little bit like the president, and then a little bit like I was just in the deep end. And
Yeah.
you were the kindest, easiest
Nice.
conversation I had with anyone through that. And I think we just became fast friends, and not a hard way to do business either, right? On the rooftop of
Oh,
some building in Miami or at some dance club in Amsterdam. I think we've
yeah.
done it all.
Yeah, man, we've known each other for a while. It's crazy to
Yeah.
think. Like, I think when the business first started, our first ever DSP was actually Beatport, and in 2006, which is like crazy to think how long time ago that was now at this point. And it was funny because I would be one of those DJs, carrying these things behind us. Obviously, this beautiful vinyl that we both love. But I was always wanting to find music much more efficiently and legally, right? Because this
Yeah.
was like after the Napster days, and iTunes still really didn't even have like the actual interesting electronic music that I loved. And I had stumbled onto Beatport because I wanted to create my own record label, and I was doing so digitally. And I remember the first week, and I tell this story to mostly everybody in terms of my beginning of the music business, that I uploaded my music and I made more in like one weekend than I had made in like several gigs. And it was just so like, holy shit, is this real? And I remember reaching out to some of the folks, and I was like, I just want to make sure that there's not a bug in the system here. And everybody was like, no, this is legit. So it was all I needed to kind of like get the motivation and inspiration to grow a business and like to start it. And that was like the beginning, I would say, of the digital music business. And even then it's just changed a lot, you know what I mean? Just from obviously vinyl or physical to download to streaming, and now streaming to all these different things that
Yeah.
are out there now. It's been a heck of a journey, that's for darn sure. And we've also had the opportunity at times to be like mentors to each other, which has been
Yeah.
incredibly helpful. in my career, you know what I mean? And just being able to kind of like talk about challenges that we have had, it's like nice to be able to talk about things as equals, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, this is a really important topic. There's this program that we're doing at Discogs called Finding Mastery. And what really got me hooked on it was I was listening to an interview with the host at one point, and he said this really powerful thing, which was nobody does it alone.
Right.
And when you're in the role of like the COO or the CEO, you feel a little bit alone,
Yeah.
right? Because you're not really sharing all of the things that are concerning you around the market or the business or your employees with everyone. And to be able to just put in a phone a friend, I call it, and
Yeah.
gain perspective is such a powerful thing to be able to do, and just feel like you can talk through in a very open and
Yeah.
accurate, honoring the reality of the situation with each other. And yeah, that's something that's been a lot of fun
Yeah.
too, for
It's,
sure.
at times I think being like the role of a CEO or just any executive where you're heading up teams and so forth, there's a measure at least where I have felt like self-doubt. Like, am I leading the right way? I'm paying attention to my competitors and what they're doing in the press. Like, I want that. Like, am I doing the things the right way? And that's where I think it's important to have really great relationships with your peers to where it's
Yeah.
like, hey man, I'm trying this. I think I'm like not doing well, and just often hearing like, "Hey, that's happened to me as well." You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
really good.
it's good to have that. On that topic, I know we recently talked a little bit together about just fraud in general,
Yeah.
right? And I know you guys have headed up some like really powerful tools for that. And I'm curious what you're seeing in that space. I know we've had to deal with some things on our side too, and not cheaply. It's an
Yeah.
expensive endeavor to invest in. But what is your perspective on all this like fraud going on in the space right now, and Symphonic's clear response on that?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think the pandemic really unearthed a pretty massive growth in fraud because everybody was at home and everybody was effectively trying to create creative methods of blowing their music up. What we've realized, though, is that they were doing so in methods that weren't legal. So we've seen, the rise of artificial streaming. Obviously, copyright infringement is pretty massive in the sense of what we deal with to ensure that we're protecting our rights holders, but even rights holders that are not clients as well, to make sure that we're not distributing something that might be infringing on their content. There's other aspects such as user generated policy circumvention, which is like a massive tongue twister, but
What does
effectively,
that even mean?
yeah. So on YouTube, for example, whenever you upload a video, if you get something on your video that says match third party content, that is because someone, perhaps a distributor, has uploaded the music that you are including in that video, right? And
Okay, yeah.
YouTube allows you to do that, but
Yep.
effectively that little portion, there's a credit of that video that would go to the rights holder, the distributor and or the artist
Yeah.
that uploaded it in that regard. So there's a lot of scammers that are unfortunately taking snippets of popular songs and putting them in the middle of their files, for example, to actually upload. So we catch all of that. And just in general, we have become much more of sort of like an authority for fraud prevention and
Yeah.
enforcement than we ever did when we first began, which was really just to put records out there and give them to the world to feel joy and so forth. So it's been a
It,
challenge. Yeah.
it's such a cat and mouse game. I like from the days at Beatport, we first were introduced to
Yeah.
fraud, and people would go download the whole top 10 list and then sell it on Zippy Share or whatever. And we'd be constantly combating that. And I've had phone calls with Interpol, like all kinds of crazy stuff to try and swat that down. But the tools have become really, really sophisticated
Totally.
as of lately. But as the tools get more sophisticated, that means there's better tooling for the fraudsters as well. I
Correct.
know on our side, we invested heavily in all of our tools around authentication and early detection. We have things reading messages and trying to shut stuff down. But we're at a point that we're hiring a product owner here pretty soon that will be focused on just identity and fraud in general to help us just stay on our A game. I never thought of it as like a core discipline a business would need, but in this
Yeah.
day and age, I think you just have to have people in-house who are experts, and just for whatever reason, they wake up in the morning with the fire inside them to shut it
Yes.
down and just want
Yes.
to go catch everyone and get it done. And I love that. So we're leaning in that direction too, because it's
Yeah,
just
it's
showing up
it's it's a
everywhere.
must. You have to protect your business, but you're protecting others. I
Yeah.
can tell you that identity. verification, implemented it about a year ago, and it's done, really, really great thing for us to be able to prevent, fraudsters from coming in. And if they even come in without any, warning signs, we've been able to put blocks in place to
Yeah.
prevent them from coming in. I've been very outspoken to our competitors and as part of the Music Bites Fraud Alliance to really encourage more use of that. And I believe that's going to be something where DSPs and everybody is just going to start to require more. And ultimately,
Yeah.
putting your driver's license or your passport out there might seem scary, but really at the end of the day, it's to protect your account and
Yeah.
to ensure that, there's some sort of monitoring that has to go on that is legitimate. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about that. And if our team can ever help your team, in
Yeah.
terms of like
Let's
our world.
share.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we could all fight this together. Yeah. It's so funny how many places ask for passport or photos now. It just like getting a new phone, I had to do that. And probably 10 years ago, I would have just been like, no way, I'm
Yeah.
not doing that. But a lot of the point-to-point encrypted, photos being sent up are safe. And yeah, it's wild. I think AI is part of the reason why deep fakes and AI have made it a lot easier for this stuff to go on. And so just to kind of pivot into that side, more of the like, how is AI impacting music? AI is impacting physical, and I'll tell you about that in a second.
Curious about that
But
actually.
it's got to be impacting the digital world more. And I'm really curious about what your experience with AI, good or bad, has been.
Yeah, so first, as it pertains to our world of distribution and streaming and so forth, most digital service providers or DSPs, as I like to call them, operate with a kind of royalty pool model, right? So let's like look at Spotify, for example. They will pool all the advertiser sort of programs that they have around the world, as well as all their premium subscriptions. That goes into a pie, and then every distributor, every supplier of content gets a share of that pie based on the consumption that they make. So, that pie continues to get more and more effectively taken up by more content that's coming in. So, one of the cons of AI is the more content means the more consumption means the less that actual legitimate, musicians and creators
Oh
will
yeah.
will get. I do
Uh-huh.
think that Spotify's done a great job. The changes that they've done in terms of monetization changes of saying 1,000 streams are required for you to monetize are a step in the right direction to protect rights holders, I would say, in terms of AI and just the mass upload of music. But for us, we're seeing certainly our costs are going up because we're seeing more content, and there's just a lot of unknowns from a legal perspective. But where we're going with AI is we're not against it. I think as a producer and somebody who's been in music for a while, if AI assisted, production is I think really, really interesting, and I think is going to unearth really great talent. But even if it's 100% AI, one of the areas that we're really trying to focus on is just get that disclosure from the client. We want to know if that production that you're
You
uploading is
trained properly. Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
that will help us inventory in the event that there are changes that occur. But
Yeah.
really, we want to promote to the community and to all of our clients that we're gathering this information not to be damaging towards you, but to educate ourselves, because I think at this moment that's kind of the best we can do while all the litigation is occurring. And that's just
Yeah.
one little sort of like slice of the cake because there's certainly AI being used for nefarious purposes as well. But I'm super
Totally.
curious about your end.
Yeah, it's both sides of it. So, I saw something on AI and physical music, and people that they haven't put it out on vinyl yet, but I'm just waiting for it to happen. Somebody played these amazing, they were actually really cool songs, and it looked like stuff from the 70s and the 60s and the 50s that I'd never heard. And I see a lot of stuff just being at Discogs and being surrounded by people who thrive off of finding things. And I'm like, wow, this stuff's really good. And the punchline in it was like, the reason why you haven't heard of any of these is they were all just like literally invented recently, and
Interesting.
they're made to look like the history. And so as on our mission, right, which is to have the world's most accurate database, which is millions of people contributing to on a regular basis, I think that's a game that we're going to have to figure out, because you're going to be able to deep fake the images, you're going to be able to deep fake the artist names and so forth, and hopefully the goodwill of the community so far, it's been amazing. We'll police that and keep it from going on. But I think our timeline of history in music and everything is going to get very swayed what's going on currently and what's gone on in the past. And it's going to be really hard for humans to discern what really went down unless you were actually there. And so
Yes.
that's the little bit scarier side. I think on the more interesting side of it, to your point, is this. And we did a talk about this at the Harlem Vinyl Festival. Is I really give credit to streaming for the rampant growth of vinyl, and the reason why I do is I believe it's lowered the barrier of entry for discovery. Right? You discover things, and then if you're like me and you want to develop your musical identity through physical forms, be it like cassettes or CDs or vinyl, then you can go buy the things that you love and keep them, and they'll, they have a special place in your home and in your heart.
Sure.
Now, with that, I see the uh, oh gosh, I lost track of where I was going with this. So, oh yeah, here it is. So with that, you've got the AI music going into the bigger pie, right? And we all heard on the earnings calls from Universal and so forth that they see the space as 600 million paid subscribers, and they believe that'll get to a billion at some point, right?
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, the pie is not getting any larger because whether you're a hardcore listener or you're a moderate listener, we're all paying the same price for a streaming subscription. So where do they have to turn to? The actual human artists that are out there, they're going to have to turn to physical or events or experiential or something special that we haven't even learned about yet in order to monetize so that they can continue to do this for a living. And I think that's actually a positive thing for physical and vinyl, because it'll only strengthen the number of projects that are coming through that fuel our pressing plants, that fuel our homes and our collections. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out, because it's like there's what, 8 billion people on the planet. We're going to approach 1/8 of that. I don't know off the top of my head how many of them can afford a smartphone and a subscription, but I think we're probably starting to arrive at full saturation for that. And so, I wonder where it will go next in
Yeah,
order
I,
to
I
continue
tell
to grow.
artists all the time. I mean, I definitely have a
Yeah.
question also for you in terms of how you see the market and physical with
Yeah.
indies. I tell a lot of clients that we talk to, and even just folks in the space that are in music, UMG in particular is very big on super fans, and I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that everything you mentioned is to me like under the super fan sort of like banner in terms of being able to work directly with them, sell directly with them, and
Yeah.
create experiential marketing around them. You know, I've always thought that indies have a bit of a barrier from a physical perspective, more so
Yeah.
because the pressing plants are A, it's expensive to press records. B, I know the lead times are a little bit different than it was when I was pressing vinyl, when it was not in the heyday that it's at now.
Yeah.
So, I do wonder, and I want to ask you, like, with vinyl being so successful, an indie might look at that and say, "Oh, I can sell a lot
Yeah.
of vinyl because the vinyl market is happening." What are your thoughts on that? What do you think about like an indie kind of just starting out there without
Yeah.
effectively a presence, let's say digitally, let's say, is that a good idea? And what's,
Going into physical.
yeah,
Yeah, I think there are a few indie artists, or at least started out indie. The Hermanos Gutierrez, like they did a really good job on Bandcamp. They're putting out their records. They were selling out very quickly. I had to use my want list and searching and hunting to get the ones that I have now. But it's, as you know your demand, then you can right size what you're pressing for that. And I think now that the pressing plants are kind of normalizing again. There's more capacity than there was before COVID. I think COVID, there were supply chain issues, there was limited capacity, and that has actually gone maybe a little farther on the other direction. And so you should be able to press records without having to have huge lead times. Maybe not, when people come to you, I'm sure this happens to you. I want it in 2 weeks. That's not
yeah,
reasonable. That's
yeah,
not going to happen. But
right,
you can get it done reasonably fast. And I would just look at, the demand that's coming through and really design your strategy. I've start out smaller and then build up and build up and build up as your following builds up,
sure,
so that you don't end up spending a ton of money, because it is cash intensive, right? You put a bunch of money out there and then you're sitting on assets that you can't move, and they're just taking up space either in a warehouse or in your home. And it also devalues them. That's something that we looked at. We actually took the cross section of the most collected and the most valuable records on Discogs, and we tried to get a barometer recently of like what makes that the case. And what makes it the case is something that's special, and we use this term QSR: quality, scarcity, and relevance. And if you can get all three of those, and there's a lot of subjectivity to that, right? The scarcity is going to be different for Taylor Swift than
Right.
it is for Cleo Sol, right? And so, if you're putting out, well, I'll use Adele for a second because we all know this one, right? You got Taylor Swift puts out 1 million, Adele fast follows, tries to do 500,000. Beautiful record. And you look at all the comments on there,
Absolutely.
beautiful record. But everybody in there is like, well, you know why they call it Adele 30? Because there's always 30 copies everywhere you go. And then you just see them stacked up at Goodwill, 3 stacks of them high for $5 a piece in mint condition. You might end up shifting your brand in the wrong direction
Yeah.
if you go overboard on that side. So I would just play that game slowly. You got all the time in the world, especially if you plan on doing this for a while. You look at the Rodrigo record, Cold Fact. I think Light in the Attic has done a brilliant job, of bringing out a cadence of meeting the demand, but not going overboard. And so they keep repressing it at the right time and right timing. But the value of that record has remained at like 150 for the longest time. And of course it's already got quality. We know that. And then, they're making sure that it stays a little bit scarce, which is good for the collector community. And then, of course, it's relevant when they put it out. They're always tying it to the right things. And so I would say that to any indie as well. Do something like that. Don't go overboard. Don't go for the cash grab. Just do this over time and be in it. Be in it for a while. Like let it normalize itself out over 5 years.
I also definitely have to call you out on one thing because it's
Yeah.
Hermanos Gutierrez.
I know. I
But
knew
I know that's a tough one.
you were gonna do that to me because
That's a tough one. It's a great
I'm so
record.
bad. Yeah,
Whoever-
I love those guys. So,
Whoever
I
heard
mean,
that, I can put the spelling in the chat in a bit, but it's a
yeah.
record as well.
Amazing records. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're so
actually,
awesome. Total
we
rock
end up,
stars.
my wife Jeanette and we end up like listening to that sometimes when we're in the car. But I've actually played it when I'm working because sometimes you just need instrumental, work or music to be able to actually get something done and so
Yeah.
forth. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you for the correction.
Absolutely, no worries.
I
was
promise that I'll try harder next time.
All right, no
I
worries.
can't.
I was curious, like with Discogs, what is like your, not the goal, but like who are you most after? Like who are you most interested in as far as like a customer on your end?
As a customer, okay, yeah, that's a good question. It is the hardest business I've ever run.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's the hardest business I've ever run is it's basically two different business models that compete with each other.
Yeah.
And so I can't look at customers. I have to lead from core values.
Mhm.
One side of our business, as we all know, is this like almanac / Wikipedia of music that's been crowdsourced and built by amazing, intelligent, like you have conversations with some of these folks, they go deep. They really care, right? Most of them have written books on labels that you've never heard of, right? Like that's how deep it is over here.
Right.
And it's more of a library science. But of course, to have a resource like that that's available online, carries in like 6-figure monthly server bill, right? We have millions and millions and millions of people coming in just to look at it. And so, when the business model started, Kevin was monetizing it through ads, and that was enough to a certain point. But eventually, as the marketplace grew, and people wanted to trade their records and who were part of the community, because it started out first, I just want to put my collection in. And then it moved into, actually, I want to buy from other people's collections. Well, the smart move was, well, if we take a fee off of each transaction that happens, and it's really only happening because this database is here, then we can refold that money back into continuing to fund the project. And that's how we look at it, right? It's more of a symbiotic relationship. And so every time we make a decision, we have to do it from the core values of stewardship, legacy, because we want this to be around for 300 years past when we're running it, and then community, because it's community built. We have a community advisory turntable who's now helping us even with our product roadmaps and how we're moving the business forward. And we're trying to open up our transparency, which has been a little slower than we'd like it to be, but we're going to get where we need to be for our customers. And so we've kind of have to live in this fishbowl where everybody has a say and we're getting lots of feedback, and every decision we make has to include them. And so I'll give you kind of the pinnacle of it, which everybody knows Discogs for, which is the value of the record.
Sure.
if we were just a regular corporate business, we could have easily just run the marketplace and had the Wikipedia and not shared the market information back to the community. But I know when Kevin was looking at it, it's like, if we're going to do a marketplace, then I have to take something from that and contribute back to this database, because this is the symbiotic relationship that we're building. And so that's where the idea of like telling people what the price is or the value of the record came from, and then putting it into a Creative Commons zero database that anybody could take and use for research purposes or their pet projects and so forth. And we
Nice.
certainly do have our fair share of those, and been in different journals and research spikes in that degree. So yeah, it's this really interesting business model. So I look at it from core values. And so whenever we're making a decision, if we hit the mark, we're thinking of good stewardship for this community, and then what we're doing will have legacy. It makes it a lot easier for us to come to terms with it, because a lot of times we're
Yeah.
trading good revenue opportunities for doing the right thing.
Yeah, no, I love
Yeah.
it because it's a true like gift to the music community. I think a lot of those values are very similar to us, right? So like
Yeah.
our main customers, obviously the artist or the record
Yeah.
label in this case, and it's kind of evolved here and there, which is why we want to give them as many monetization opportunities as possible, but really
Right.
transparency. So because the music industry, as we all know, has always had sort of a bad little black eye of transparency, and particularly when you hear the horror stories of certain artists back in the day. Well,
Oh
we've
yeah.
we've
Oh
always
yeah.
wanted to be like, look, you can see how much you're streaming, you can see the source of your streams, you can get paid monthly, and now we're doing as much as we can to protect rights holders with all of our trust and safety efforts. And going to Juan's question about fake promotions and what do I think about artists kind of like falling in terms of fake promotions and kind of like seeing these scams. I mean, we try to
Yeah.
be as educational as possible, I would say, in terms of saying here's trusted sources where you can actually use to market your material, because not only are there bots and bot farms and technologies that people can use to try to get rich quick, so to speak, but unfortunately, an artist might see something on a website that's like, hey, I can help you get 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify or something like that. And usually those are the ones that are using also illegal methods to inflate and unfortunately scam artists. So those I can say are being closely monitored, but there are so many of those that it's certainly a whack-a-mole game. But going back to like our customer, it's like we feel just responsibility to always remember why we're doing this and
Yeah.
to ensure that not only we're helping folks grow in the industry, get paid, control their rights, but also now protect them as a big part of the sort of distribution day to day.
Yeah, let's go all the way back to your humble beginnings, and then
Yes.
walk us through this timeline, because I think I've seen a little bit of it,
Sure.
snippets of it, as I've gone through with you in different moments in time. But I'm really curious. I mean, you went from like a smaller operation,
Yeah.
and I think you did a lot of physical at the beginning,
Yeah.
and then you moved into all of this new technology and having to deal with fraud and all the things that we're talking about today, to protecting people. How has your customer base shifted over time at different moments, and why? How much of that was in your control and out of your control?
Yeah, great question. So I would say when we first began, it was very much in my background of being an electronic music producer and wanting to help other DJs digitize their productions, and effectively kind of like start the aspect of a digital record label. So I would say we probably went from being very electronic focused to being very genre agnostic. But what's great is that the tastes of humans really consuming music changed, and I would say streaming totally blew it up to where as a distributor we became massively more genre agnostic because we were there in the beginning of the Latin boom of the streaming era, seeing the likes of Ozuna, Bad Bunny doing what they're doing. That certainly created many more different customer types. And as we started to work with them, we ended up building a reputation not only with our digital service provider partners, but also as we kind of like were marketing these stories, we started to attract more of that. So I think the aspect of seeing how download was effectively kind of like a physical record where you the consumer really had to focus as carefully as possible to for your purchasing decision. Streaming kind of made it to where anything was a purchase decision and you didn't have that sort of like friction point and that really expensive aspect of kind of like building up your collection. And now we all have digital collections in terms of playlists and so forth that are a complete and utter mess of every genre of music, I would say. But I think that that's kind of like the beauty of where music is nowadays. You can kind of like everything. I remember growing up and even in high school, it's kind of like that person only listens to hip hop and they're very, very blatant and very upfront about it. And that person only listens to rock. Now we all like everything because we have access to everything, you know?
You have to see this on a whole nother level too. And I'm curious. Is like the genre dead? Is the idea of categorizing music by genre just gone? Because that I feel like it's harder than ever to place music even now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I used to actually shop on Beatport being led by the genre, and
Yeah.
now you're led by mood or feeling
Yeah.
or even like fresh finds, for example, and so forth. I love that actually. I think that unfortunately the DSPs haven't like fully grasped onto that and so forth. And we still have some DSPs that are very genre
Yeah.
specific, and we have to continue to evolve in that regard as well. But I end up now just like listening to music and not even really caring or searching for genres, but rather trying to find something that I haven't heard before. I generally like to listen to smaller artists now, and I
Yeah.
like working with established artists, but also like the ones that are just starting out because there's just a lot of great talent sometimes that doesn't ever get heard.
Yeah.
So
For
this is
sure.
where I've actually used Discogs to find talent as well as Spotify in combination. So whenever I'm
Yeah.
like, if I happen to have a gig, which is very very rare nowadays, I will actually like go on YouTube and see DJ sets, try to see if I can actually find the record on Spotify, but if not, use Discogs as a source of seeing where it might be out and
Yeah.
kind of eventually even buying the vinyl because I'm a huge fan of vinyl as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I use all these different things to be able to consume music and become a super fan myself of certain artists. And there's some out there that nobody may know, but they're doing amazing things.
Yeah. I've heard stories around people using the platform mostly for discovery and finding out about new bands. I have somebody I'm working with who's actually the chair of our community advisory turntable, and he told me that he uses the platform. He wants to discover a new independent band that he hasn't heard of yet every week, and so he's always in there 12 tabs deep trying to find things, and through all the interconnections and everything else. It's a fun and it's a rabbit hole. But so
Yeah.
so we talked a little bit about how the customer has changed in your business. I'm also curious, you went from a handful of people working
Sure.
for you to how many now?
So it's about 160 now, all
160
in various parts of the world. So
in
which is
various
hard to
parts
believe.
and multiple locations. How has that been as a leader, building that business and that infrastructure? Because sometimes that can be
Well, I can tell you that
scary.
I age every day. I mean, there's less hair than when you first met me. There's more gray hair. So that's the reaction to it. But no, I mean, honestly, it's been great. I will say that it's definitely not you're a leader and you have to lead, but without a great team under you and then under that and without great contributors to the company that actually share the mission, vision, and values, it's impossible to really even get to that scale.
Yeah,
I will say that there's definitely challenges in terms of productivity at times and
yeah,
even kind of like sharing the passion. And when you're doing something, there might be a lot of chatter where you can't control that chatter and so forth. But ultimately, it's a fun challenge, and I think it's one where we operate in such a beautiful industry that's music, but at the same time, we're also a tech focused company and very SaaS like in terms of our approach and
yeah,
how we operate from a sales perspective, et cetera. And we try to kind of create this hybrid where I think it ends up being kind of like a place for multiple types of brains rather than
yeah,
just one. And
yeah,
because of that, that enables you to, I think, lead better. And I think to,
yeah.
I would say, listen better than you might be, if you didn't have all these different sort of personalities. So it's been fun, and I'm excited to continue on, obviously, as we can continue to grow over the next few years.
Yeah, is the idea to continue to expand the
Yeah, I
business?
mean,
Yeah,
what we've done recently is obviously the U.S. is a huge market in terms of music consumption, but we've expanded to Brazil, and that's been really great for us in terms of consumption, but also like the different genre types that I mentioned earlier. We've just now become much more international because of Brazil. Obviously, Latin America was big for us, and we have an operation in Mexico where I was just at actually a few days ago. And now, we're really looking at other territories where there's certainly the ability to grow market share. Obviously Europe, but also Asia as well. We brought somebody really, really great on board there to explore that side of the world, which we're excited about. So I would say most of our expansion is in business development in terms of trying to find new talent. We've certainly built up an insanely great tech team and just have like a really good roadmap ahead in terms of different tools, including AI and things of that nature, which will be fun and exciting. But now it's really about kind of showing the operating leverage that we built and
Yeah.
ensuring that we can bring new business on board that can benefit from what we built, that others are benefiting from now.
Yeah, that's great. I follow, your company, you and people who work for you on Instagram, and it's always great. Like I saw everybody was just in like Mexico City
Yeah,
recently, and
yeah,
it's like what a cool job to be
yeah.
traveling to all these remarkable cities that are rich with music and culture, and then expanding your business in by learning what's going on and then trying to bring it all.
We're
Yeah.
incredibly blessed. It's like, I wanted to ask you, you
Mhm.
started off as a software developer, but did you did you have any aspirations of being in music, or was just sort of like, look, I'm a tech guy and this just happens to be a cool industry, and now you've been swept up by the music industry to
Yeah.
where I don't know if you'll ever leave, which we hope you never leave,
I'm
but
not leave. I
yeah,
don't think I'll leave at this point. It's just too much fun,
yes,
right? Sure, there's been opportunities to make like, great money and have
sure,
all these cool benefits, all the alluring things that bring you into Silicon Valley. But what I like about what we're building here at Discogs, especially, is whilst all of these companies that bring in venture capital or private equity, and then they point everybody at some number that they have to hit. There are some people who get really fired up about that. I'm not one.
sure,
And, instead, while they're laying off everybody because they didn't
yeah,
hit their numbers or whatever, we've got stability. And through that stability, we're building tenure and expertise. And through that expertise, whilst they're figuring out how to talk to each other again and do it with a smaller team, we're actually building momentum in our strategy. And so I like what the music industry represents because it's not a flash in the pan, it's a forever thing,
yeah,
right? So we got to build our company to be a forever thing too,
yeah,
and especially this company, right?
yeah,
Because we've had like all kind, like you should do NFTs, you should do this, you should do that. It's
sure,
like, you know what? If it becomes the overwhelming format that everyone's using, we'll add it to the database, and it'll become apparent when it is. I don't have to be the first one to do it. It's something we can take our time with because we're building something different,
yeah,
right? And so, yeah, it's what would I say? I went to school for technology. I loved programming as a kid, um, but I enjoyed working on cool projects,
yeah,
and music was a lot of fun. I've always loved music. I
yeah,
was the guy in my very small town, Electric City, Washington, and
nice,
I came back from San Francisco after a visit, and I had Mark Farina's like Mushroom Jazz and all this stuff, and I'm
yeah,
playing it, and they're all like, "That's weird. That's weird music." Right?
yeah,
And it's so funny because now they're coming out to visit me and they're like, "Oh, have you heard this EDM thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." But it's so much a part. It was always a part of my life. We
sure,
played a lot of basketball growing up and listened to a lot of hip hop. So the majority of my collection is hip hop from that time. Listening to Ice Cube, listening to Dr. Dre, listening to Snoop Dogg, all of those artists that while everybody in my town was listening to like Creedence Clearwater and Collective Soul, which was also great music, we were exploring this other genre and having a lot of fun doing it. We're playing it on like boom boxes,
I love
which
it.
was a thing when I was a
Yeah,
kid. We still had cassettes. My first
yeah,
car had a cassette player in it, that type of a thing. So yeah, I kind of fell into the music industry,
nice,
but where I really thrive and I enjoy is building culture.
yeah,
That is, I had no clue. I actually hated management as a software developer. I didn't like leadership. I should have been fired many times based on the way that I responded and the things that I said to my leaders.
sure,
Uh, but now I'm on the other side and I love it. I think it's such a cool way to build your business. And so for me, building culture first
yeah,
is how I'm doing it. All of the business model, all of the opportunities are going to come from culture first.
Yeah.
And I want to give you a little, you were mentioning something about the employees and sometimes the motivation and so forth.
Yeah.
And we've seen all these challenges that different companies have had. You look
Yeah.
at people putting on the like mouse tracker to make sure
Sure.
that people are there. I think if you're doing that, it's
That's going to be
broken.
a problem. Yeah, exactly.
It's far broken.
Yeah.
We're going through a cool experiment right now, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I've been able to do something that I've never been able to do at any business, which is just invest in the employees
Mhm.
without expecting an ROI from it at all,
Yeah.
just to help the employees figure out who they are. And so through some really cool training, that finding mastery that I was talking about, you actually develop this program where you understand your purpose in life, who
Sure.
you want to be, how you want to show up. What are the words that you put to that? And it comes out in this cool thing called your personal philosophy.
Mm.
And then if you know who you are, and you're looking at your job, if you can tie your personal philosophy and your purpose to what you're coming in and doing every day, that's pretty damn exciting. You see motivation go up. People
Yeah.
aren't even working more hours. They're just more excited because you see the alignment.
Yeah.
And when you tell your personal philosophy to the people that are around you and they get to understand who you are a little bit more, then we're playing a whole new game and it's a
Totally.
lot of fun. Because I know I've got like my HR guy, he came to me, he's like, it's all about adventure. I want everything to be an adventure. I'm like, I can make HR an adventure. Tell you
Yes.
what, like no problem. And then you have like the IT guy that's like calm and like I'm gonna be calm and I'm gonna be pushing through issues with that type of energy. So when he shows up calm, I know he's damn serious still. And
Yeah.
I'm not pushing him. Like we know that he's still very locked in, but that he wants to come with a calm energy to solve those issues. Just changes the game. And I feel like it's really a gift because we've even seen folks who've gone through that exercise
Mm.
who've then opted out because they're
Yeah.
realizing that they're no longer aligned, that who they are and what they want isn't aligned with what we're doing and where we're
Right.
going.
Yeah.
And that's also really powerful. And you know what? It's so much fun when somebody exits in a way where it's like
Yeah.
all on the up and up. It's like, hey, this isn't for me. And you're giving them a recommendation on the other side. You're
Exactly.
hoping that their next job is just as awesome as the one that they had here or better for them, in fact, because it's more aligned with their personal philosophy. And
Totally.
so that it's a really cool experiment and I love it. I'll if you're interested, I'll send you some of the
Definitely. You
details on
see,
it,
I
but
mean, this is
it's
this is what this is about. We're catching
yeah,
up, and I get to learn stuff from you as well, which is really fantastic. I mean, I
yeah,
think with us, one of the things in terms of culture, which is also equally important, and I think it should be for many companies and business owners that might be tuned in. We try to make it as inclusive of an environment as possible.
yeah,
It's the type of thing where we're doing a lot around how to communicate with each other, understanding how to operate globally and understanding other cultures because
right.
we in the US might operate one way, but folks in Mexico and Brazil might operate differently, and we have to be very cognizant of that. We're also very big on mental health.
Yeah.
We provide mental health benefits for everybody because we all know that there are challenging times and things that we all go through. And I think that that's an important one to ensure that it's there, and also that it's confidential, that it's not something that we as business leaders have to like advise on professionally because we're not professional, of course. And I think every one of us could use that at times, whenever
Yeah.
there's stress and challenges that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and you open up a really cool thing. Something when I at a previous company, I won't say the company and I won't say who because of the confidentiality of it, and I take that very seriously,
Yeah.
because it's really brave to tell someone when you have like a neuroplasticity or a neurodiversity is the word I meant to say, a neurodiversity that you're working through, and you may not want your colleagues to know,
Right.
but if you tell your leaders and your leaders are accepting, like it sounds like you are, then you can create environments where they can be successful. And I remember I was working with someone and basically being in big rooms like that open floor plan is
Yeah.
just destroying the chemicals
Yeah.
in their brain and sending them into a really dark place.
Sure.
And so they needed to be in an environment that was a little more closed off so they could have their own time. But they were a brilliant and creative person. And so we were able to just design a situation where they could have their own office. We didn't have to disclose anything to everyone else. Made it make sense for everyone, which was kind of fun. We basically created a computer lab that
Nice.
anybody could use at any time, but it was mostly for that one person. And
Sure.
then, they were able to thrive in that environment. And then also another one was like off hour meetings was really messing with this individual, and They needed it to be a 9 to 5 so
Yeah.
that they could take care of the things they needed to take care of. And to be able to meet that need
Yeah.
is awesome. Just feels good, right?
Totally.
Because I think we underestimate what's going on behind everyone out there in
Yeah.
this world. And if we just had a little more gratitude, patience,
Actually, yeah.
understanding
Yeah.
for all of this, like, I mean, the world's already a
Yeah.
tough place to be.
Challenging. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if we could just have a little more patience with each other and
I agree. I
understanding.
mean, I also
Yeah.
think it's in certain aspects it's good for business. I mean, I've
Yeah.
spoken to a few
Totally.
employees. Our office is right here in downtown Tampa, and we have folks in our office here, and we might have like 28 folks that work out of this location, but that only about maybe 7 to 8 show up to the office. And like to us, like that sounds, or to some listening, that might be like, wow, what do you have the office for? Actually, the ones that need the office, and then the
Yeah.
others that are 40 miles away, we're going to lose productivity and morale by forcing them to drive. I would rather than be at home and be able to kind of be in their routine and have proper work-life balance, because if they are good in the mind, then they're going to be good in the work. And I think that that's an important thing for all employers out there.
Yeah. If you're taking that time for yourself, right? We start meetings with meditation,
Yeah.
things like that. If you're taking that beat and you get your slow breathing in, you calm
Yeah.
yourself. When you're in those moments, you can knock things out in what would take multiple days or multiple hours in like 20 minutes, because you're not distracted. People aren't on Slack. People aren't doing their email. We're
Right.
all in it together. And I've just found that if you create the space for that, somebody needs to go for a run in the middle of the day. I don't care. And you
Exactly.
don't have to take time off for that. Just go
Yeah,
do it,
exactly. Yeah, I mean,
right? Just
it's petty
manage your time
to
with your team.
exactly. I think it's
Yeah.
petty to be so kind of like nickel and dimey of sort of like life, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're the same way. You know what I mean? It's like do what you got to do. We
Yeah.
trust you as well. Like if we bring
Yeah.
on an employee, it's about trusting you to do the work.
Yeah.
I
And
did
it'll
want to
show up
tell
in
you.
the results anyway,
I did
right?
want
Like
to.
you,
I
you
agree.
you don't you don't need to look over their shoulder to
I
know that
agree.
the
Yeah,
results are happening.
it's
Yeah.
like also like a waste of time. You're not
It's
if you're
all
doing
for
it
everyone,
if you're
including
doing
them.
that, you're not doing your job either. You know what I mean? Ultimately, I did
Yeah.
want to tell you one funny thing, and then I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
a question. I wanted to tell everybody a method of how I've been buying records lately,
Oh, rad.
because I think it's kind of fun. I actually have done the whole Goodwill thing and so forth as well. But I've been, and my wife will, she's not as happy about this, but I am. I've been doing like blind purchasing of vinyl in
Oh,
terms of like I go on eBay and I just find like you know
excuse
re-
me?
yes, well, eBay, actually I bought a few also from Discogs as well, but
Okay,
I'm
good.
very meticulous when I'm using Discogs. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah,
trying to
okay,
find
good.
something. I'm trying to find one record that's impossible to find, which I'll also talk to you about.
Yeah,
But I've ended up just finding amazing stuff by just being like, here's 50 records from eBay from this lot that happens to be in this genre. And I highly recommend buying records blindly, because you end
yeah.
up, A, you're getting a good deal, and B, you end up finding these absolute gems. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah.
actually bought 50 records from Kenya, and it's like music from Africa that like you would
Rad,
never really find unless
rad.
you go there.
Yep.
So that's one way. But I wanted to ask, like, what is your buying technique when you're
Oh man, I'm like not as exciting as you at all in this. I'm still building my collection. I mentioned this earlier before everyone joined. I only have about 530 records so far, and I'm holding myself to only adding between 3 and 5 a month. I don't want to go much larger than that. That hits my budget just nicely. And so I'm still building. I'm still building things, and I like new.
yeah,
I don't buy a lot of used. I actually buy a lot of represses and so forth. A lot of the hip hop never made it out on vinyl. It's
yeah,
just now coming out for the first time, and so I'm still in that mode. But I do have a system, and what I do is for my want list, which we just added this tool that it was our dream. Kevin, I really wanted this tool, and these really smart people were working on our API, Stoat Labs, and they built it off on their own, and then we acquired the technology and have them working on it with us, and we've integrated it now. And so I have a very small want list. People
mhm,
have massive want lists.
yeah,
I can't handle the noise. So I know the next 40 records that I'm interested in getting, and I have them listed in there, and I have them filtered by like I don't want to ship from around the world, so I try and get them in the US. And there's a lot of stuff that's not even available in the US. But I have all my alerts set for that, and then different price points that make sense for my budget. And then when they come on, I just grab them as quickly as possible. But I prefer, for the sake of me, and actually, since I used to run a direct to consumer business, I'm very conscious of the box waste
Yeah.
and also the margin for the seller. So if I can pull 3 or 4 records from one seller in a hit, I'll try and do that, because then it's one shipment. It increases their margin actually, because they only have to ship in one box. It's the same cost if you're shipping 4 or if you're shipping 1. And then I just watch my little want list thing, and when I see a seller that has 3, then I go grab it. But I do have a timeline on myself, which is I have to buy new records every month.
Nice.
In that way. The other one is I go to record stores. Every city I'm in, no matter what, family vacations, work, I always go to a record store. I always buy something and bring it home with me. I love it. I almost remember every record that I bought at a record store, where it was from, and which city I was in when I bought it. And I enjoy that, even though it's a giant pain in the butt to do
And
that.
I also I agree. I do the markets and record stores in these locations.
Yeah.
I will give a shout out to one of your other companies here. So much of what's displayed around my office is also Vinyl Me Please.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously,
I got that coming in every month.
uh,
I did notice that Bob Dylan though. That's not
yeah,
the
that
Vinyl Me
one.
Please one, is it?
I think it is actually.
Well,
Yes.
we put it on the way that it was originally, so he wouldn't be
Right.
standing up. He would be sideways.
I just thought it looked so cool.
You just rotated it that way. All
Yes,
right.
exactly. I
Because
will
when
say
you fold it
that.
out, then
Yeah.
he's all the way standing up.
Yes, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty diverse. Actually, I have more hip hop displayed than others, but the one in the top and the bottom left, all the way over there, is
Yeah.
a Clockwork Orange
Oh, yeah.
soundtrack, which I bought in Brazil. So like that's that going back to
Oh,
your thought process there.
what's your it's unfair to ask a record collector what their favorite record is.
Sure.
Most people can't answer that. But what is a recent acquisition that you are just so excited about?
Ooh, the Euphoria soundtrack was really good.
Cool. Yeah.
And that was also Vinyl Me Please
Yeah.
as well. And that was just like Zendaya just on the cover also is just like really beautiful and awesome. So
Yeah.
I like that. But yeah, it's hard. I'm looking around over here as well because there's a couple there. There's a Johnny Cash one that I bought in Nashville that is
Cool.
also a pretty fantastic one too. So
Yeah.
those are probably like the ones that come to mind.
Yeah. I love that.
How about for you?
Cool. Yeah, well, when I was in Amsterdam, I went to Rush Hour, which is one of my favorite record stores out there. And there was one of the guys running the place, and I was just like, look, man, just we were in the like disco section, because I also love disco. I was like, something disco, and he took me into Dr. Robotnik, which is a French disco single, and he was like, and he pulled it out, and he's telling me that his mom like dated one of the people on the things, and I was like, all right, I gotta buy it, and I bought it, and I love it. It's like my next DJ gig, I'm pulling that thing out and I'm playing that record. It's a great
well, let me know when that is if I'm in town.
yeah.
Check it
Yeah,
out.
I'll let you know. Nobody's hiring me right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. I play like for friends or for myself, really, at the end of the day. But no, man. I mean, I think we're almost up to the hour mark,
Yeah.
so I don't know if we want to like open it up to any additional
Yeah,
questions.
I didn't see a whole lot of questions
Yeah,
through
people are
here.
just giving us props, which is nice. But feel free to just throw one in there. Anybody else, if you like, Otherwise, obviously, we'll turn it over back to Tom here.
There's a couple questions in the Q&A from Juan. One about
Yes.
AI that I thought was interesting.
Oh,
Yeah, I mentioned that one in one of the discussions. And Juan, by the way, is one of us, a symphonic team member. So thank you, Juan, for joining. Of course, I love talking to you. And he's also a very talented classical artist as well. So hopefully you'll be seeing him and hearing him more as well. But I would say, I definitely think that from Juan's question about not only AIs, but what do you think about the fake promotions? Spotify monthly listeners data get crazy because an artist could be listened to. I think in general, the way that we want to deal with it and the way that we think every distributor should deal with it, I would say, is be educational and try to get folks to be as organic as possible in their marketing. Obviously, in terms of using the tools that are out there, working with your distributor to market your material, because we're doing so directly with the DSPs. And also even leveraging some of the platforms that are out there, Spotify for artists, Apple for artists, etc. That's much better than using any tool out there that promises you listeners for money, for example, which generally they're either using some sort of AI bot or other creative scams. So
I have two quick questions before we wrap up for both of you. Since you were talking about your favorite record that you bought, I want to know the very first record that you ever bought with your own money back when you were a kid. Do you remember?
Like a vinyl record or
Yeah.
first, because it was CDs when I was a kid and
yes,
cassettes.
right.
Oh, screw you. Are you that young?
Yeah.
I
was
if you think
thinking,
I'm young, you should hear his age.
yeah, I mean, well, actually, I'll at least tell you my first tape, and then I'll tell you my first vinyl. Actually,
Oh.
so my first tape was in 1992 when I first moved to the United States, and it was Guns N' Roses' "Appetite for Destruction." I'll never forget that.
That's a good one. Really
My
good.
my first vinyl came when I was around 14, 15, because I just started learning to DJ, and I had bought it was a record from a producer here locally that was doing electronic music, who we now have the pleasure of working with, and who was a huge influence on me production wise. His name is Scott Christina / Infinity was his name.
Yeah, rad. Cool.
And, he definitely that was the first record I bought, was one from him. So
Lloyd?
All right, so first tape I ever got was Van Halen for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, and I got in a ton of trouble because I didn't know what carnal meant, and the acronym like passed me up, and my dad was so mad when he saw that because of the phallic title. But it was a great cassette, and I listened to that a lot. First CD that I ever bought was was the Weezer, the one with the blue cover. I always forget the name, with the sweater song on it and everything.
Classic album.
Yeah, that I love that. There's a VHS tape somewhere in the world of me and my friends acting like we're the band members playing the music with the song going on in the background. I'm sure it's absolutely embarrassing, but I still remember to this day all of us like pretending like we were Weezer.
There is a service out there that can digitize all that for you.
Yeah, let's not do that.
You know, that's cool stuff.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, this has been awesome. You all delivered on the promise that I made at the start. That was the audience would leave smarter and more inspired than they arrived. So thank you. You also got a lot of props in here for just being nice guys. So you guys have done well, and you do good.
I can attest to that for Lloyd, for sure. One of the nicest folks and one of the greatest executives I've known. So absolutely.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. And the reason why we're such good friends is I think we're very alike, and I've always appreciated that about you. I remember there were sometimes meaty conversations we had to have as a customer client at Beatport, and you were always so gracious and straightforward and transparent. We always worked through those together.
Yeah.
So
There's no room for mean people, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you can't get much done that way.
kick out the assholery, right?
Exactly.
We don't need it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great advice to live by. So, gentlemen, thank you for everything you do for making the industry better and more democratic, especially for the indie artists. And keep buying vinyl, folks.
That's right. Keep buying.
Yeah.
Thank you
Awesome.
very
Thanks
much,
so
guys.
much, Tom.
All
Y'all
right.
take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers.